guys, I started some more chicken eggs. I had my mom bring me down because I can't hatch enough eggs in one day with my few chickens to fill up a whole incubator. So I had my mom bring down some eggs and she brought me all kinds of colors. I've got light blues in there, some olive eggs, and dark brown and light brown. And we are going to hatch some more chickens for my neighbor whose incubator I'm using, Paige and Spencer, and myself. I want a couple more hens. She needs a couple more hens, and we're gonna see how it goes. So speaking of chickens, we harvested harvested 5 roosters this morning from the last batch of chicks that Paige hatched at her house. It ended up being that one of her dogs got a hold of a couple of the chickens when they were younger. So she only has 3 hens left and she had 6 roosters to deal with. So of course, when you raise your own chickens from eggs, it's usually about 50% are roosters and 50% are hens. She lost a lot of hens to her dog. And unfortunately, it's not as easy to get rid of roosters as some people think. If you take a look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or everyone's trying to always give away free roosters. They're a dime a dozen here. And if you want to raise your own chicks, unfortunately, you also have to deal with that. You can't have more than 2 roosters to a flock normally, especially if your flock is less than 10 hens. They will just fight with each other. They will overwork the hens, and you have to do something with them. So fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, they have become a future chicken noodle soup, or whatever we're going to do with the meat. But our philosophy is they have one bad day, so they live wonderful, great, joyous lives, and they just have their one bad day. But that's something you gotta deal with if you want to raise your own chickens. But today is not a chicken content video. I'm going to show you guys through the garden. It's going to be an end of July kind of garden tour. This isn't an official garden tour. I'm not going to name it that either. But I wanted to let you guys know what was going on with all of the plants in here. We're past 30 days of over 100-degree heat, and you can tell. So here's my onion bed that I had replanted with my saved seeds of California Black Eye number 5. They are doing okay. I will show you a different bed with the same beans in a bit. They're growing, they're fine, they're just not growing very quickly. But this Armenian cucumber is ridiculous. I'm getting so much food off of these guys, and they just keep going and going, and they love the heat. So they've pretty much taken over this trellis. I'm trying to train these vines to grow up and over, but they just keep sprawling down here, which is fine. And here's a big one. I'm letting a lot of them get super big and like turn into actual melons, because they're not truly a cucumber, they're truly a melon. Because I've harvested so many tiny ones, and they're just sitting in my fridge waiting for me to make pickles. And they store a lot better when they're full-size melons. So I'm trying to let some of them grow out just a bit bigger so I stop filling up my fridge with cucumbers. And I do have a video coming soon of what I do with the melons. I'm going to do a kitchen video where I'm preserving a lot of my harvest. It's not going to be out. It might be out this week. Not sure yet. But it's not going to be out today. This is coming out today on Sunday because it's been so long since I've made a video for you guys. So here on the other side, the Armenian cucumber fills both sides. But I've got basil and a couple of pepper plants and this dying squash plant, which is just you can't see them right now because it's hot, but is absolutely covered in squash bugs. So it has gone the way of the rest of my squash plants. This just occurred today. I came out here and it was pretty much dead. And like I explained on my last video, there does come a time when you are just completely exhausted from the garden. And not only that, it is so hot. I'm out here at, I think it's about 12:30 right now. because we were harvesting roosters all morning, so this was the soonest I could get out here, and it's just exhausting to be out in this heat and working in this heat, and the plants are exhausted, and I just don't have the energy to pick off squash bugs anymore. So my squash goes the way of every other squash plant. Oh, there's some bugs I can show you. Look at all these little baby squash bugs hiding in the shade. You little rascals. But here we have a shishito pepper, a jalafuego, a serrano pepper, a sugar rush peach, and this is a padron pepper. And then this is a giant Genovese basil plant. The peppers in this bed didn't start off too well. This is one of my brand new beds that I made this last year, so the soil isn't the best quality, and I will show you that right now. But since it's been heating up, they have been really taking off, and I'm actually getting peppers off of them now versus when they were stubby little babies that weren't producing me anything about a month ago. So back in this first bed, these are bean plants that I planted right after I harvested all of my onions from the winter. And then in this bed, which is my first bed that I've ever created on this homestead, are bean plants that I also planted at the same time. So these versus these. It is quite ridiculous how large these are, how healthy they are compared to the other plants which were started at the same time. But that just proves how much soil health should be taken into account when you're growing crops, because this bed right here with the good bean plants is a 3-year-old bed, no till. I continue to add compost and amendments every year, and it's just this super rich soil full of life, and you can tell. What my bean plants in here are about 10 times larger than the ones in the onion bed, which is a brand new bed that I put together this year. It has poor quality soil so that I don't have to spend too much money on it, but it can improve. If you guys want to build your own beds, cheapest way possible, just use store-bought soil and mulch and a lasagna method. I have a video which I'll link down below. You can do it. It just will take time. It will just, instead of money, things either cost money or time, and in this case I prefer time. So in a couple years that old onion bed will be just as good as this bed. So coming to my first tomato bed, I've already taken out an Amish paste, which was just dying from the heat. But I still have a German pink, the chocolate pear, and the Mexico midget alive in here. Now, amazingly, this German pink is setting fruit in 100+ degree days. They're pretty small, which is fine. The fact that it's setting fruit at all is amazing to me. But these are also my saved seeds that I saved from my previous German pink that I had, and it did well in the heat the first year I grew it, so I really wanted it to, you know, become more acclimated to my climate and grow. I'm very happy with this tomato plant. It is an heirloom slicing variety, and I can take this guy off. Look at how beautiful that is. And this flowering plant right here is bee balm, which I have never grown successfully until this year. I'm very, very happy that it's growing. It doesn't appear that my bees love it as much as the name implies, bee balm. They really love my sunflowers over there, but it looks gorgeous. And here in this pepper bed, all of my peppers are performing swimmingly. I have several sugar rush peaches. Here, that's what basically this whole green mass of plants is sugar rush peach peppers. And some jalafuegos, which are just a spicier version of a jalapeno, though they don't get as large as a true jalapeno. And here I've got Thai hot peppers, which are spicy little fiery daggers of danger. And then banana peppers over here. And then one lone shishito, which it hasn't been producing that well, but that'll be fine. So if y'all remember, this is where my Tahitian melon plants were. And they have recently died off from the squash bug problem. I did get a good harvest of 2 storable melons, Tahitian melons. They're a winter squash, so I can store them over the winter, use them whenever I need to. They'll last several months in storage. The rest of them, they ended up dying before they were fully mature. So what I'm going to do with those, and probably in the video, the kitchen video I have coming up soon, I'm going to make a squash soup out of them, which is what I did to the Tromboncino squash that didn't mature properly, and it was delicious. So I can't wait to do that video. Here in this 4x4 bed, I have some peppers that you guys might not have been aware of. This is a Bikino pepper, which is a tiny little spice pepper used in South America. It doesn't have any fruit yet, but it does take a long time to mature. They grow really slowly. Oh wait, here's one. So this will mature to a deep yellow or an orange. And they're a perfect little snacking pepper. A lot of people pickle them and use them as like some sort of dressing or an appetizer. I only grew one this year. I couldn't find a lot of use for it because it's not spicy and they're so small that you have to pick like a million of them to get a meal. But I did want to grow one this year and it is coming along great. And then here I have a New Mexico Big Jim pepper, which I don't think has any peppers on it because I just harvested it the other day. That is a New Mexico True variety. And this is my basil. Here I have Genovese basil right here. And then this is holy basil, also called Tulsi, which is a medicinal basil. And this poor tomato has curly top. So if you can see how these tomato leaves are just curling over at the top, it has become very yellowed. It stopped growing. I saw the signs of curly top about a month ago. I didn't want to pull it out though because it has a couple of fruits on it. And this was an Estiva. It's an F1 hybrid from Johnny Seeds. And it put off a good amount of fruit at the beginning of the year. But of course, I can't stop it if a bug comes through with the virus and bites my plant. So this plant is still alive and it will continue to be alive. It will continue to ripen the fruit, albeit it'll just ripen more slowly. So I'm hoping that I get a couple more fruits out of this because there's a ton of tomatoes on here. Look at all these little tomato babies. There's so many. So I'm hoping that it just continues to grow even a little bit and I get another harvest off this plant before I have to rip it up for the fall. But this one, I do not know which type of tomato this is. It was a random one that had lost its tag. It's still growing just fine. And here in these 2 1x4 beds, I have my purple hull pink eye cowpeas, which are crunchy and ready to be harvested. Oops, leave that guy there. I'm gonna harvest these later and then go inside and shell them. And then any of these vines that you see that are way up here, they are asparagus beans that I intermixed with my purple hull pink eye cowpeas. You can even see one, yeah. So I've got some asparagus beans coming up here. But most of my asparagus beans are right here on this trellis, although I did intermix them with these beans as well. Look at this pretty calendula. And here in this 4x4, I still have ripening Grand Marshal tomatoes. These are a determinate type tomato. As you can see, my trellis method has just completely fallen by the wayside and these are laying about everywhere. But I have several fruits in here that still need to ripen and they still are ripening. So I'm just kind of harvesting as they come up. Here's a bunch of red ones I can get today. And this Grand Marshal tomato did pretty well for me this year. I'm very pleased with the variety. I've never grown it before. It is a hybrid, again, from Johnny Seeds. I don't grow a lot of determinate tomatoes. I tend to like indeterminate tomatoes because I like constant reproduction where I can have slicer varieties all year long. But for a canning tomato, this isn't a paste tomato, but it's not as juicy and lumpy as like an heirloom slicer variety. It was very good, and I've got a ton of fruit off of it that I've got in the freezer waiting for the day when I do all my tomato canning. So back here in my very first garden bed I ever made on this property, I have replanted with okra and cowpeas after I did my garlic harvest. Just look at these bean leaves, guys. What is this? It's as big as my hand. And then the okra is coming along swimmingly. They love this heat. This is a really good crop to grow here in the desert. And I just have them mixed all about. And these are 2 tomato plants of an unknown variety that I planted here after I harvested my garlic. I did not have tags on them. I had lost the tags, but they both look like slicer varieties to me from their flowers. Oh, you know what? This might be a cherry tomato variety. See, when these flowers are all very close together and small? I think this is a cherry tomato, but this is definitely a slicer variety. Now, as to the actual variety, I'm not sure until it ripens. I didn't plant too many different heirloom slicer varieties this year. I'm assuming it's going to be either a German pink or the yellow variety. I forget the name. I'll put it on the screen. And it might be an Estiva as well, but it looks a little too lumpy for the hybrid Estiva tomato that I grew. Those were very uniform round fruits. So I'm assuming it's an heirloom hybrid from the way that it looks, but until it fully ripens and it changes color, I'm not going to be sure. But it has done super well in this heat. All of these fruits were put on in the last month. So, and it looks so healthy. Look at it. It's gorgeous. It's just taking over this halfway bean trellis. I love it. And right to the right I have my bean trellis, which is my favorite green bean to grow in this climate, the asparagus bean. I've been harvesting from here daily. And I don't eat green beans daily, but a really good way if you have green beans to preserve them until you have enough to eat is to put them in a bowl of water in your fridge, because otherwise they just dry out super fast. They get all wrinkly, and especially if you don't have enough bean vines in your garden to like make a full meal when you daily harvest your beans, just store them in the fridge in a bowl of water until you have enough to make a meal. And that's what I do. It's great, super useful. And this is my other pepper bed, which has several padron peppers in it, as well as green and red chilies, Hatch New Mexico green and red chilies. Although if I'm being honest, I just pick a lot of the green ones and make them into green chili before they turn red. And here's my final 10-foot long tomato bed, which is unfortunately not full of tomatoes. I had to rip out, I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4 tomato plants that either had curly top or some other disease. This is a German queen from Burpee, I think. Yeah, it's an heirloom tomato, but I bought a start from the store when most of my tomatoes died from curly top. It's doing well. It hasn't put off any flowers. I've had some blossom drop on this plant, as you can tell by just the ends right here being blunt. It just drops its blossoms because it's so hot here, but that's fine. I've got other tomatoes coming in elsewhere. Here I've got Thai basil and an Estiva tomato and a German pink tomato here, one on each side. The Estiva tomato, the F1 hybrid from Johnny's, has really performed well for me this year, despite a lot of my plants getting ruined by curly top virus. The ones who haven't gotten bit, haven't gotten the virus, were just great performers in the heat. They're still setting fruit, and the fruit was very uniform and perfect and amazing. I'm very happy with the Estiva and the Grand Marshal from Johnny's this year. Those 2 hybrids that I was unaware of, and it's my first time trying them this year, and I'm absolutely going to do it again. So in my in-ground garden, still got my sunflowers going, though not as strong as before. And I've let this one go to seed because I wanted to start saving seeds from it. Although these blooms I'm still deadheading. They came up a little bit later than these front ones. So I'm still getting my show of sunflowers from here, but I'm not cutting as vigorously as I did in the spring. And then here I've got several corn plants and several lodging corn plants. So this is lodging. When the corn stalk falls over like this, the plant doesn't die. This isn't a desirable trait in your corn plant. And it can happen for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people talk about hilling up their corn, and that absolutely helps prevent this from happening. I didn't do that at the beginning of the year. Frankly, I wasn't really sure that I was going to be able to grow corn because I've been unsuccessful every year that I've grown corn. But we have really high winds here that can cause them to lodge over. Of course, not hilling up at the base can cause them to lodge over. These plants are still alive. I try and prop them up with rocks. I don't really have a whole lot of extra soil that I want going in these in-ground beds to be putting so that they stand up. I'm okay with it. I'm just letting them go. At this point, like I said, I'm just so exhausted with the garden. I'm just keeping it alive, getting what food I can, and trying to make it through this summer heat, which has been horrendous this year. Several of these red and green chili plants that were doing poorly at the beginning of the year have since taken off. But all of the squash, almost all of the squash I had out here has gone by way of the squash bugs. This was a cantaloupe that I actually got 2 cantaloupes out of. The squash bugs don't really pay attention to this guy. So he's not looking dead from the squash bugs. He's just suffering from the heat. But the ants got to my cantaloupe before I could. Which is super disappointing when you're waiting for a fruit to ripen on the vine, and then just the day before I was gonna harvest them, the ants had bored holes in them. I was able to salvage like half of the fruit and eat it, but that was a bummer. And I think I'm gonna need some ant control next year because they really pissed me off this year. And when they go to seed, you just take off these top layers of plant material, and the seeds are hidden inside. So there you go. There's a couple seeds, those little black things right there. I'll just spread those out. But I'll come through here at one point and just take off a bunch of these heads and harvest the seeds and store them that way. I'm gonna take a seat next to this basil because it smells really good while I drink my wine, because it's Sunday and it's afternoon, so leave me alone. It has been just so miserably hot this year, and I am not an alarmist or anything like that, but it is absolutely hotter than I've ever known it to be for so long in a while. And it's making gardening really, really difficult. There's been a couple days I've come out here and watered twice just to get the plants to perk back up. But this is ridiculous. I can't do it anymore. I cannot wait. I think next week, I looked at the 10-day forecast, and it's like at the end of 10 days, like August 1st or July 31st or something, it's supposed to be 99. And I am so excited for it to be 99. That is how hot it's been here. I'm just excited to get out of the 100s. Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait for the day. But I have my eggs inside. We're going to do some more hatching in 21 days, hopefully. I've got my fall plants started, which I showed you guys at the beginning of the video. And hopefully all of this stuff makes it through until we get into the cooler temperatures of fall. I'm going to have a bunch more tomatoes again, thanks to these extra plants I planted. Although no more squash. I do not have any squash left. Everything is dead from the squash bugs. And I don't think, I kind of want to replant like maybe a yellow squash because it did so well here this year. But I just really don't want to take up any more space in my garden for the fall plants, because I started a ton of broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. Not to mention I'm going to start more in a couple weeks when I'm going to start my cold weather crops that are supposed to last me through December and stuff. So I just don't want to take up a bunch of space because I'm gonna have nowhere to put my brassicas and my fall crops. So I don't know yet. I do know is I'm gonna go inside. It's like super hot out here. But thank you guys for joining me today. Stay cool. I know it's hot in multiple parts of the US. I'm not too up on my international weather watching, but stay cool. We're gonna get through the summer and it's gonna be just fine. And then it's gonna be freezing and we're gonna be wishing it were warm again. Such is the way of life. Catch you on the next one.